Hi everyone, and welcome to Moxxie Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, and I'll be your host as we explore what life coaching is and how it can empower you to create and live your best life. We'll talk about topics ranging from our own self-defeating behaviors to getting to know our authentic selves. Together, we'll investigate a variety of self-coaching modalities and explore a wide range of topics relevant to getting the most out of the life that you are actively creating. New episodes will drop every Tuesday, so please subscribe so you don't miss out on the great hints, tips, and tricks, and generally awesome content that will help you create your best life. So welcome, and thank you for listening. Hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Moxxie Coaching Podcast. My name is Michelle and I'm your host, and I am so excited about this week because this week is the kickoff really of the first intentional self-coaching with the tarot lesson that we've been talking about coming up for quite a while now. So beginning this week, maybe not every week because I think there may be people that want to hear something other than tarot things, but on a fairly regular basis for the next couple of months, you can expect podcasts that are specifically related to learning how to self-coach with the tarot. And I just want to make sure everyone is completely in understanding about what self-coaching with the tarot is. Essentially, this is a system by which you will be able to learn to read for yourself without having to memorize in depth the individual tarot card meanings. Eventually, should you choose to continue your learning, you will be able to read for other people. But the method that I am a proponent of, the method that I've created that has worked for me, is not one that is going to really give you a very, very in-depth knowledge of the tarot in and of itself. I suspect, however, that once you begin to see how valuable it can be, and once you begin to understand how the individual nuances of understanding that are available when you do have that foundational traditional knowledge, you may find yourself backing up and learning a little bit more. But the whole purpose of the self-coaching with the tarot curriculum itself is to get you up and running, doing some self-coaching in a way that works for you and is a useful and successful process pretty much right out of the gate. Now, you can get the traditional card meanings from so many different places. There are websites, there are podcasts, there are blogs, there are books, they're all over the place. And we're not going to get into a great deal of detail on the traditional card meanings as we go through, in part because, yes, you can find them in so many different places, including on the Moxxie Coaching, Self-Coaching Saturday Instagram post that we do every week that introduces you to somewhat of the traditional meeting, but also some of the self-coaching questions that you can ask yourself with the tarot. But it really is necessary to have an understanding or to know where to look for the information. that is related to the traditional tarot in order for you to be able to develop your own coaching practice. And we'll learn more, we'll talk more about that as we move forward. The method that I use and the method that I teach is one that involves asking specific questions of yourself based on the tarot card that you pull. And those specific questions are coming from the traditional card meanings. So that's why it's important to either have a foundational knowledge of the cards, or, which I suspect is going to be the case for most people, you're going to go out and grab a book, or you're going to use the book that comes with your first tarot deck, or from wherever, right? Because there is so much information out there. So you can get it from anywhere, and I don't want to add to the confusion any more than is necessary. There are almost as many different tarot card interpretations as there are readers. It's a very personal, almost an intimate art of sorts. And the longer we read, the longer, or the more nuanced our readings become, and the more each card develops its own personal meaning for you or for those that you're reading for. Learning to read in the traditional way can be a frustratingly long process. It's the way I started out reading, and while I would say that it served me well from the perspective of having an understanding of the individual card meanings and, knowing quite a bit about the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the tarot, that level of knowledge, in my opinion, is not completely necessary. And had I known about this self-coaching methodology that I've been developing, I might not have gone quite so deep into the tarot. However, I'm glad I did, because now I get to teach you guys and help you guys figure it out for yourself. So the old way of learning the tarot is pretty simple. You get your deck, you dig into the book, you make a bunch of flashcards, you start learning by rote, whipping through those flashcards, whatever method you can use to remember. And you're talking about, at a minimum, an individual card meaning and the individual card keywords for 78 cards. And that's not taking into consideration what suit is it, what's the numerology behind the card, all of these things, right? There's such a wealth of information there that it can get absolutely overwhelming. And I think it's probably a personality trait of mine to struggle a little bit with where to draw the line with how much do I need to know. It's not important that I know everything, all the things about all things tarot in order to be able to help people. But I do need to have a foundational knowledge of my own if I am going to teach you. If I were just going to be using the tarot for myself, I would say, hey, this is just for me. I'm going to make it work for myself. And that's what I would recommend for you. Look at it as a tool that a multi-use tool? I don't, my analogy's failing me here. A tool that you can create for yourself. Let's put it that way. So often what happens is you get someone that's gung-ho about reading, and they've got their flashcards and they're doing their thing, and they realize after a couple weeks how much work it is, right? To just sit down and learn the way we did. They probably don't even teach this way in elementary school because it's not the best way to learn. Interesting, I just realized that. Maybe that's why this has come to me, because as a teacher, I realize it's not the best way to learn the tarot. Huh, light bulb. Okay. Anyway, so what typically happens is we get all excited, we do our tarot card, we do our flashcards, we realize how much work it is, we put them down, and then, 6 months later or a year later, we look over and there they are sitting in that same place with a nice big fat coat of dust on them because we got overwhelmed and we put them away. And I will tell you the honest to God truth, and actually, if you have listened to other podcasts, I came back to the cards a number of times before I would say it stuck, before it was important enough for me to put in the time and the effort to gain that rote knowledge. But I didn't have to. With this method, it's very simple. You get your deck, you choose whether or not you want to lay out a spread. When your cards are laid out, you ask yourself specific questions that are prompted by that specific card, and you write down your answers. So by doing so, you're going to be amazed at your newfound way to tap into your inner wisdom. The questions that we ask ourselves can come from two places, and both of those places have their own unique advantages. You can follow the Moxxie Coaching podcast and learn the questions that are appropriate to be asked, given to you in a gentle flow as we go through all of the deck. You can also grab a tarot book of your own, and once I explain the methodology, sit down and write your own questions, the questions that you think would be relevant based on the cards themselves. You absolutely do not have to depend on me. I know that from my perspective, I probably would do both, just because in my mind it would give me a larger foundation of questions that I would be able to ask. But it's completely up to you. At some point as well, there will be an online or a digital course available that digs into the questions that should be asked and all of those. But at least for now, this is an introduction to the concept, and you should be able to at least get started with this information. My method of self-coaching with the tarot really came about out of my own frustration when trying to teach myself how to read using, the traditional methods that we've just talked about, the flashcards and the workbooks and all of those things. In a traditional tarot reading, the type that I thought I wanted to learn, you use a spread, and a spread is a way of a pattern in which you lay out your tarot cards, and each individual location on that pattern has a particular meaning in the reading. So as you are developing readings, or as you look online or whatever, you can find readings. Everything from, this card should represent my past, or this card should represent how I'm feeling about X, Y, or Z, or this card should represent something or someone that's there to help me, right? So you've got the positional meaning of the card as well as the traditional meaning. What I found was that I was having a difficult time translating the keywords and the traditional card meanings that I learned into meaningful information that I could actually glean from my readings. So for example, each tarot card, we know, has its own meaning. But if you are using a tarot spread, whereby you lay out your cards in a particular pattern with each position in that pattern representing a particular area, a particular aspect, you need to not only be able to understand what that card meaning is traditionally, you also need to be able to look at the positional meaning and blend the two and figure out how that blending of information addresses your particular situation. Let's say I am doing a reading and it is a general reading. And in that general reading, I have a card position for my career. And the card that comes up in that position is the Three of Swords. So I have the Three of Swords, which means strife, loss, heartbreak, could mean deceit, could mean, do I have my strategic plans figured out? Does it mean it could mean someone else betrayed me. It could mean I'm betraying myself. It could mean all of these different things. And I need to relate that to the concept of my career. So that was blowing my mind. I was really struggling with how to take that information and convert it. So that's when I began to develop a set of questions that I could ask myself when a particular card came up. To be completely honest with you, that alone actually pulled me away from using spreads, at least at the beginning. Instead, what I started to do was doing a general reading with just a few cards and looking at those cards as a whole and how those cards related to one another. And that way I didn't have to look at 6 different factors. I really only needed to look at 3. And that worked for me. And it seems to work really well for other people as well. So let's give you a little bit more detailed example. The Strength card depicts a delicate woman very calmly, very gently closing the mouth of a roaring lion. Above her head is an infinity symbol that represents her divine knowledge. The lion represents something fierce and ferocious that the person asking the question needs to face. The roses represent the divine knowledge of the self, and on and on and on, right? All of those details in the traditional card meaning. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So add in the suit that card represents. Is it represented by a sword, a cup, a pentacle, or a wand? Add in the fact that there are 78 of those cards. You start to see how learning the tarot can be really a lifelong process. So contrast that overwhelm and look at it like this. Cool, I just pulled the Strength card. Where in my life do I need to find some strength? Is the strength that is needed going to come from me? Or is that strength going to come from someone else? What can I do to cultivate the strength I need to work through a situation? Do I need emotional strength? Do I need spiritual strength? Do I need physical strength? What kind of strength am I going to need? And on, right? So by approaching the tarot from the perspective of questioning ourselves, it takes us into a space of personal inquiry in a way that allows us and allows our subconscious and allows our psyche to begin working through some of the things that we need to work through. And the reason it works so beautifully is because of quantum physics, because of our subconscious, we naturally choose cards, we naturally draw cards that we need to see. And trusting that relationship, trusting the fact that you just drew this card, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. That this card is saying, hey, you need to look at these things. And it's up to you how much you want to look at those things, to what depth you want to go. So contrast, that simple answering a few questions, thinking about it, letting it marinate, journaling, or at least, using voice recorder, something like that, versus literally sitting down and digging out 3 books and trying to figure out what the heck the strength card means, what the heck that particular symbol means, what the heck this, that, or the other. If you have your core set of questions for each card, that is a perfect place to start. You don't need anything else. Naturally, the next question is, okay, smarty pants, where do I get these questions? I don't see a book of questions out there. How do I approach this? Well, you have 2 options. You can, as I think I said earlier, grab yourself a tarot book and use that tarot book to look at just the keywords and just the descriptions. Don't bog yourself down in all of the other stuff. Use the keywords, use the descriptions, and write down a list of even 3 or 4 questions that in your mind represent that card and what that card is trying to teach you based on your understanding of what you read. What I would do if I were starting over is, rather than getting bogged down in an active learning process of trying to even sit down and write out all my questions, or sit down and create a database of my questions, which is probably something I would have done in the past. My recommendation is to make this more of an organic process. It will be more enjoyable for you. I think it will stick better. I think you're more likely to do it if you are moving forward in a way that's meaningful to you, and the information that you're using is information that's relevant to you at the time. Meaning, learning the cards as you go, learning the questions or coming up with the questions that you want to ask of each card as you go, as opposed to sitting down and trying to write them all out at the same time. Daily readings are a wonderful way to start. Basically, you're pulling a few cards every day. You look up your traditional card meaning, and you come up with 2 or 3 questions that you ask yourself of each of the cards that you pulled. Then you begin your journaling, and you keep track of the cards that you pulled so you can go back and refer to them later. And it's sort of an organic growth process. Eventually, you'll find that you may have a couple different types of questions that you're going to ask for a specific card. But it is a much gentler, kinder, more introspective, more intuitive way of tapping into what the tarot has to offer in a way that isn't overwhelming and intimidating. Let's look at another example. Let's say you pulled the 5 of Pentacles. The traditional meaning, the traditional keywords of the 5 of Pentacles are loss, lack, material insecurity, suffering, uncertainty, deprivation, competition, all yucky things. And the questions that naturally come up, knowing that those are the key words, are: am I feeling insecure? Am I feeling a sense of loss? Am I feeling left out? What am I feeling insecure about? Why am I feeling left out? Is there an area of my life that is financially tenuous? Because it's a pentacle card, right? Is there a financial situation in my life that I need to be paying attention to? So all of those questions that are food for thought, that get you writing, that get you thinking, and as soon as you get into the flow, I believe your brain goes into autopilot and you just begin to articulate the things that you need to articulate, to hear what you need to hear to move yourself forward. So like I said, make this an organic process. Make it a process by which you just do, a few a week. Maybe you do 3 readings a week, and each time you do a reading, you just pull 3 cards. However you want to do it, just try to avoid putting yourself in a position where it begins to feel like drudgery, because as soon as that happens, the joy is gone and your ability to really tap into what you need to tap into to pull the information out of everything, out of the card meanings and the card keywords and all of those things. It just diminishes if it becomes a task. And if it's more of an active process by which you're cultivating your own personal growth, your subconscious is going to help you out. And before long, you will have basically a library of questions that you can ask yourself for each card. And the more that you read, the more you're going to be able to pull out of there, the more you're going to be able to learn about yourself. So, as I said earlier, you have a few choices. You can go about it by writing your own questions. You can go about it by continuing to listen to the podcast and learning my questions and why I came up with the questions I did. And you can use a combination of the two. I would suggest that you don't just stick with my card meanings, that you look beyond that, or not my card meanings, I'm sorry, my card questions, that you look beyond those card questions and create some of your own to help you develop a relationship with your deck and with your spirit guides, right, as you're doing the reading. I think I've probably said this a bunch of times, but I'm going to reiterate it. I do suggest you begin with the standard Rider-Smith-Waite deck. And I suggest that because it is the traditional, it is the foundation on which most modern tarot has been built. It has the most consistent card meanings, and they are the foundation on which the majority of other tarot cards these days are created. So once you have questions that you have formed based on this industry standard deck, you'll be able to use those questions with pretty much any other deck that riffs off of the Rider-Smith-Waite methodology. But if you choose a non-Rider-Smith-Waite deck, you're likely to, inside of the book, end up with the artist's interpretation of the cards, not the traditional. So just keep that in mind as you are making a decision about how you want to approach creating your own card definitions if you choose to go that route. Let's end the episode by talking about at least one of the cards that we're going to be talking about. We'll start out today with the first card of the major arcana, which is the Fool. And if you don't remember from earlier podcasts, the major arcana cards are numbered from 0 to 21. The Fool is number 0, and the Fool represents the beginning of our journey in life. Looking at the image of the Fool, you would notice that it is an image of someone in a very happy, light-hearted mood, appearing to get ready to step off of a cliff into complete oblivion. The card has a picture of a little dog bouncing around at the Fool's feet. The Fool is carrying I think it's a white rose, to illustrate the innocence and the naivete of the Fool. He's carrying a little teeny tiny hobo-ish, old-fashioned hobo-ish pack over his shoulder. And he's completely unprepared. He's launching off into this major life journey. And all he has is his little teeny tiny pack, a yappy dog, and a rose. And he is not ready. So often when the Fool card comes up, it's indicating that there is something new that's coming. It could be a new career. It could be something new in your personal life that you're launching into. It could be a new relationship. And often it represents a clean slate, right? A new start. The Fool hasn't yet screwed up. So anything that is coming forward is pure possibility. There is no having to recover from what has been done in the past. So when you think of the Fool, you can think of specific archetypes. And an archetype is a universal symbol of something. So the universal symbol of the archetype, or the universal symbol, of the Fool, is this archetype of a person, male or female. Doesn't, just because the card is a male does not mean it cannot be a woman. Male or female, who is launching into something new, launching into something amazing. Neil Armstrong, the astronaut from the 60s, right? He was the Fool incarnate. He was launching into this complete unknown. He was stepping off the cliff and not knowing completely what he was going to find. Another example is Dory from Finding Nemo. You know, Dory's like, ding, 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 ding. Everything's new, everything's exciting. Nothing is a big deal. She's always excited about things. And she doesn't know enough to be afraid sometimes. She doesn't know enough to watch out for herself. She is this complete babe in the woods, wet behind the ears, not fish ears, you know what I'm saying, wet behind the ears character who really is just like, woohoo, life is good. What is coming around the next corner? Joey from Friends is kind of another similar character, right? The character of Joey was very innocent, not particularly bright, very kind, and always just kind of poking along. So when you see the Fool card come up, it can be helpful to have an idea of what their archetype might be. And as we move forward, we will talk about archetypes for each of the major arcana cards, at least. Because number one, it's a helpful way to key you into what types of questions you should be asking yourself, even if you don't remember them. And it's a great way to to gain a little bit more clarity about the nuances of these individual major arcana cards. So, what questions would you ask of yourself should the Fool come up for you in a reading? Well, based on all of the information that I just gave you, we know that this is an innocent, a new, kind of a newborn, a newly reborn type of person. So what can you ask yourself? How about, has something come up in my life that makes me feel like I'm the fool? Is there something that has come up in my life where I just feel like I don't have the information I need? I don't have the skills I need? What is it that's coming up for me that might be pointing me in that direction? Why am I feeling insecure in a way that the fool should have felt had he known better? You can also ask yourself, am I planning, or should I plan something new? This card is coming up in a reading that I'm doing for my career. Maybe this card is saying, hey, this is time for you to look at doing something new. It's also time for you to look at all of the positives and all of the negatives and do your due diligence, because the Fool did not do that. But is there something that you could or should be planning that will take your life in a new direction? How about if you are ready to start a new project and the Fool comes up? You can ask yourself questions like, am I well prepared? Am I really ready to do this? Or is the Fool coming up because I'm not quite ready? I need to backtrack a little bit and take another look at my process to make sure that I have all of the pieces in place that need to be in place. Do I need to spend some more time on something before I launch it? Do I need to step back and take a look at X, Y, or Z before I move forward, so I know that I'm moving forward in a way that is powerful and is in my best interest? And another question, the last one we're going to talk about in this section, is if you are in the process of making a big decision, just ask yourself, what am I not seeing? What is the Fool telling me that I should be looking for? And while the Fool coming up in a reading like this is not necessarily going to tell you what it is, it's going to prompt you to start questioning yourself and thinking about what it is that maybe you need to ask yourself, maybe you need to know before you move forward. So all of the questions that we just came up with are questions that are related to the Fool. They're questions that you can ask of yourself when a Fool comes up in a reading, and you should be able to get some excellent, in-depth, introspective answers as long as you're willing to put in the thought, right? I mean, it's not a matter of, oh, you look at the Fool and you say, boom, 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 this is what it means. This is more of an introspective process. This is self-coaching. This is not someone else giving you a reading. This is you learning to do this for yourself in a way that can enrich your life and teach you a new skill in the process. Next week, I will be going through 3 separate books that I recommend to any of you who are interested in moving this process forward. And I'm going to talk about just the 3 different books. There's a beginner, there's an intermediate, and there's an advanced, because I know people come to the tarot with all different kinds of backgrounds and all different types of previous learnings. So I don't want to assume that anyone would need one specific book. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week. And if If you do not have your tarot deck yet, please grab your version of the Rider-Smith Waite deck and tune in next week so you can get a feel for what books I might recommend. If you already have a tarot book or tarot books, please go ahead and get those out, take a look at them. You can start reviewing them and start thinking about what types of questions you might want to ask when each of the individual cards come up. You can start the process for yourself and start figuring it out in a way that makes sense and that works for you. All right, this was a very long episode. I really hope that it does make sense. I'm going to try to provide the full 78 card deck of information throughout the course of the podcast. If you are interested in learning all of the card meanings at once, essentially, where you don't want to have to necessarily take the time to do the work yourself, and yeah, the podcast is great, but it's going to come in dribs and drabs. I am in the process of working on a course or a resource or something. I haven't quite figured out how it's going to look yet. That contains all of the questions that we come up with in the podcast in one place. So in theory, you could literally, rather than learn the meanings, you can just download a list of questions and use that as the starting point for your own personal tarot journey. And I will share more with you about that as that comes to fruition. Also, just a real quick aside, two things. The Getting to Know Yourself Better with the Tarot and Numerology free course is still available on the Moxxie Coaching website. September 25th at 10 a.m. Eastern, I will be doing a live Facebook presentation for a wellness group. And that presentation is going to be all about what we just talked about here, an introduction to the tarot, an introduction to learning how to self-coach with the tarot. So if you know of anybody who might be interested, it is a free presentation. And when we get closer, I will put up some links to that. And yeah, it would be really cool to see you all there. Thanks so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe. I am available on all social media. No, that's not true. I'm not available on, what is that called? Twitter. Yeah, Twitter. I'm available on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Okay, so I'm available on 4. Anyway, come find me, come see me, leave a review, rate, review, subscribe, all those good things, because that helps other people find me so I can help them as well. All right, everyone, have a fantastic week. I look forward to sharing more with you, and I'll talk to you soon. Be well.